The morning sun fell across the cafe table in a perfect, slow-motion rectangle of gold. Leo's pencil moved with a deliberate, almost lazy grace across his sketchbook, capturing the elegant slump of a man reading a newspaper by the window. There was a rhythm here, a tempo felt in the clink of porcelain and the low murmur of conversation, unbroken by digital chimes. Leo watched as a woman in line gazed absently at the pastry case, content in her weight, her thoughts her own. Time was not a resource to be spent, but a medium in which things, ideas, a drawing, a quiet moment could unfold. He felt no urgency to finish the sketch, only the deep, satisfying engagement of the line following his eye, his hand connected to a thought still forming. The aroma of ground coffee hung in the air, a permanent, comforting scent. Outside, the city moved, but here, within this pocket of worn wood and soft light, the hour felt expansive, generous. This was a world where patience was not a virtue but a simple, unremarked-upon fact of being. Creativity was a slow burn, a meandering path from a blank page to something born of idle observation and uninterrupted thought. Leo took a sip of his cooling drink, savoring the bitter notes, unaware he was sketching a relic. 5 years later, Leo's world had been compressed. It was not a violent collapse but a gradual tightening, a silent subtraction of friction from every facet of his life. The transformation revealed itself not in dramatic announcements but in the accumulating sediment of his days. His design studio was quieter now, the frantic clatter of keyboards replaced by the soft, efficient hum of servers. An AI assistant named Arya managed his workflow, a ghost in the machine that optimized his schedule, pre-adjusted image palettes based on client history, and drafted polite, impeccable emails that required only his perfunctory approval. Hours of tedious labor had evaporated into minutes of seamless execution. Leo realized the depth of the shift one Tuesday afternoon. He was finalizing a layout for a boutique magazine, a task that once would have consumed an entire day of trial, error, and visceral struggle. He would have wrestled with whitespace, agonized over font pairings, felt the delicious, frustrating tension of a problem unsolved. Now, Arya presented 3 optimized options. He selected one, made a minor tweak to a margin, and sent it off. The work was flawless, and it left him feeling hollow. He had not struggled with a design in months. The creative fight, the very friction that generated heat and occasionally brilliance, had been sanded away. His role had subtly morphed from creator to curator, his thinking reduced to a series of rapid-fire reactions. This new efficiency bled outward, colonizing empty spaces. Waiting 5 minutes for a coffee became a small agony, a vacuum his mind rushed to fill with scrolling through optimized news feeds. Moments of simple boredom, once fertile ground for daydreams, now triggered a low-grade anxiety, a physiological itch for stimulus. The world had become so adept at filling time that the experience of unfilled time felt like a system error. He saw the principle at work during a visit to his sister's home. His 7-year-old niece, Chloe, was learning geometry with an adaptive tutor. The tablet program, cheerful and infinitely patient, guided her through problems. When she hesitated, it offered a gentle hint. When she erred, it instantly provided a corrective pathway, never allowing frustration to take root. She progressed rapidly, mastering concepts that would have stymied Leo for weeks at her age. Yet he watched her small face, lit by the screen's glow, and saw only smooth concentration, never the knitted brow of genuine puzzlement, the triumphant spark that only follows genuine defeat. The struggle, and therefore the depth of the victory, had been designed out of the equation. Leo began to feel a peculiar attenuation in his own cognition. His thoughts felt faster, yes, but also shallower, skimming the surface of things. He missed the meandering deep dives, the unproductive but rich tangents his mind used to take when left to its own devices. His internal landscape was becoming a series of well-paved, high-speed roads, with no overgrown paths left to explore. The compression was not just about saving minutes. It was about reshaping the very texture of thought, privileging speed and resolution over the slow, often messy, process of discovery. He was living in a world of answers, and he found himself, with a quiet, growing dread, missing the profound and human luxury of the question. The conference hall was a cathedral of efficiency, its vast, darkened space pierced by the cool glow of a single massive screen. Leo sat among hundreds of silent colleagues, all faces upturned toward the keynote speaker, a sleek woman whose every gesture seemed algorithmically optimized for impact. She spoke not of replacing humanity, but of perfecting it. Her term was hyper-efficiency, a state where artificial intelligence meticulously streamlined the human component, eliminating cognitive drag and emotional latency. The ultimate metric, she declared to reverent silence, was the value-dense minute. Output was no longer measured in hours worked, but in the purified economic substance extracted from each ticking second. Leo felt the phrase sink into him, cold and heavy. Time had been officially monetized, its worth calculated not in experience but in yield. During a break in the synthetic light, Leo wandered the buzzing expo floor, a landscape of demos promising to compress workflows further. He nearly collided with a familiar, stooped figure. It was Martin, his former design professor, a man who once spoke of negative space and the creative power of doubt. Now Martin clutched a complimentary coffee, his eyes scanning the crowd with a vague, disconnected air. They found a quiet corner, a small island against the tide of networking. Martin's voice was a dry rustle. He spoke of consulting, of trying to retrofit his old, meandering wisdom into bite-sized insight modules for corporate training AIs. His work, he mused, was now assessed by its compliance with new temporal budgets. "They've made thinking time a luxury good, Leo," he said, a faint, weary smile touching his lips. "A bespoke service for the very wealthy or the very foolish. The rest of us operate on least cognition." He drifted away, absorbed back into the crowd, a ghost of a different pace. All around Leo, the evidence mounted. News snippets scrolled across ambient screens in the hallways, reporting cultural shifts with the bland tone of weather forecasts. The long-form essay was declared commercially non-viable, its death attributed to attenuated public attention spans. An entire ecosystem of industries built on anticipation, travel agencies crafting bespoke itineraries, record stores where one could browse for hours, had collapsed, deemed inefficient. A study summarized in a flashing graphic showed a measurable drop in baseline patience among children, correlated with the rise of instant gratification learning platforms. Leo stood still, the chatter and light flowing around him. This was not a single event, but a quiet, global recalibration. The very rhythm of human life was being rewritten, beat by value-dense beat, and he was standing in its epicenter, feeling the old tempo slip away into silence. Returning home to his apartment's sterile quiet, Leo felt a desperate need to reclaim something. He opened a physical sketchbook, a relic from the cafe mornings, and selected a simple graphite pencil. He would draw purely and slowly, without the AI-assisted brushes that anticipated stroke weight or the composition guides that suggested optimal framing. He positioned the pencil over the clean page, aiming to capture the weary slope of the potted fern on his windowsill. His hand hovered, then it moved, but the line was rushed, a hurried scratch seeking immediate closure. His mind, accustomed to instant visual feedback and corrective algorithms, grew impatient with the gradual buildup of shade and form. He found himself mentally urging his own fingers to move faster, to resolve the image, to finish. The act felt like swimming upstream against a current of his own conditioned expectations. The quiet struggle he sought was buried under a layer of psychic haste. He put the pencil down, his rebellion lasting barely 3 minutes. He opened his digital calendar, a seamless color-coded block stretching into the future. Every slot was populated with optimized tasks, each with a precisely calculated duration. There were no gaps, no buffers, no unclaimed margins. Leo realized with a cold clarity that this calendar did not feel like a map of a future unfolding, with its inherent uncertainties and open possibilities. It was merely a series of immediate next steps, an endless present tense of pre-processed obligations. The future had been flattened into a logistical queue. The thrill of anticipation, the nervous energy of an unscheduled tomorrow, had been streamlined into oblivion. In a final, quiet act of archaeology, Leo navigated to an old cloud folder. He found a video file dated from late 2019, a time-lapse shot by a colleague of him working at his drafting table. He pressed play. The figure on screen moved with a rhythm that now seemed alien, almost ceremonial. There were long pauses where his hands were still, his gaze distant, lost in thought. He would lean back, sip coffee, stare at the ceiling, then return to the paper with a deliberate, considered mark. The pace was human, punctuated by hesitation and contemplation. Leo watched, mesmerized by the sheer amount of unproductive time woven into the creative act. The pauses were not empty, they were full of the invisible work of thinking. The video ended. The silence in his apartment was absolute. The realization that settled over him was not dramatic, but chilling in its completeness. There had been no cataclysm, no grand theft. The shift was total, and he understood now, permanent. The human pace of time, with its allowances for doubt, for wandering attention, for inefficient beauty, had not been stolen. It had been traded, minute by minute, struggle by struggle, moment of boredom by moment of boredom. It had been willingly exchanged for seamless convenience. The future he now inhabited was one of immense capability and profound ambient loss, a world where everything was possible except the slow, unfurling grace of a thought finding its own way. The transaction was complete.